Have you ever felt a gnawing emptiness within, despite having everything that you thought that you wanted? Have you ever wondered if there's more to life than just the endless pursuit of material possessions, social statuses, events, and external validation? If so, you're not alone. Today, we're going to explore the concept of ego degradation and the cognitive dissonance that arises when we repress our soul or our higher self to conform to egoic identity. All right, guys, a little bit of a difficult one today, but beautiful one as well. First, we're going to talk about the illusion of the ego. The ego, in psychological terms, is the part of our identity that we construct to interact with the world. It's our interface, so to speak. It's the mask we wear to protect ourselves and to project a certain image to others. The ego is not inherently bad. It's a necessary component of our psyche. However, when we become overly attached to our egoic identity, we risk losing touch with our authentic selves, or our souls, or our higher selves. Next, we're going to talk about cognitive dissonance and the soul's repression. Cognitive dissonance occurs when our actions, beliefs, or values are in conflict with each other. When we repress our soul or our higher self to conform to our egoic identity, we experience cognitive dissonance. This internal conflict can manifest as anxiety, depression, or a general sense of ill-ease. There's many things that we do in terms of repressing this big S self that comes through when we're not ready for it. So besides experiencing anxiety and depression, very often we look for ways to run or escape or hide in our identity with things such as, addictions or work or things that we just do to distract ourselves from that inner pain or dissonance that we may be feeling. Now, the soul, on the other hand, is the eternal, the divine essence that resides within each and every one of us. It is our connection to God, to the universe, and to the source of your true purpose and fulfillment. When we repress our soul to appease the ego, we deny ourselves the opportunity to live a life of authenticity and greater meaning beyond this physical realm. Okay, so I just want to talk about this for a moment because I experienced a profound ego degradation in 2015 and have since been able to understand, articulate, manage the relationship that I have with myself beyond my egoic identity. If these are newer concepts to you, they might seem a little bit difficult to parse through because when we have this languaging, we're talking this way, it begets you to start to perceive from a place that's beyond just the mind trying to identify and understand and fit this into another egoic construct, right? You try to overly think about this. And working with the ego and moving into this relationship with your soul and your identity requires the elements of that which you get in touch with your soul with, which is really beyond the over-processing of the mind. So if you're not used to feeling, right, really basically just sitting in what you feel and being in a getting in touch with this very deep inner state within you, it's sometimes hard to access, especially if it's been covered up layer by layer by layer with repression or unawareness or addiction or what have you. So just try to open your mind a little bit, open your heart a little bit, and just absorb what you feel like you can absorb, and don't try to overly process is a key. All right. So it's painful when things come into your reality that begin to challenge your identity, the way that you've lived, right? We construct it's such a well-constructed, construct that we question and we doubt the higher self and the soul when it starts to speak, right? It becomes something that we need to compartmentalize. It's like I will, get in touch with my soul on Sunday, when I go to church, but the rest of the week, I'm a professional and I have to act this way and I don't have any time for my soul, right? Again, eventually, in due time, when the time is right for you, most people are going to be faced with an opportunity for soul growth and for this reconnection, this maturity, this leveling up in our lives to cultivate a harmonious relationship between our soul and what's beyond just this physical reality. It's called forth very often through challenge. And this is something that, externally within the world, we can see that there's a lot of struggle and conflict, right? And we forget sometimes that the conflicts that we have in our own lives are opportunities. They can be profound opportunities, and we get lost in the minutia of the conflict and in the separation state between what's dysregulating you and what you're supposed to be doing, right? Within your own construct of your ego. So, so it's a difficult process, ego degradation, and it's an ongoing one. And unfortunately, it's one of those things when it's presented to you and you start to almost pull back and separate yourself even further, and you start to realize, like there's something more going on here. It becomes often more painful to escape from that deep inner relationship, that inner landscape that wants to shed that which is really truly not serving your authentic self, so to speak. So I just want to talk about some basic things that we can do to start to cultivate this emergence and healthy relationship between our soul, our inner, and this deep inner soul knowing, our relationship with God and the beyond, and our identity in the world. Okay. What we don't want to do is live in a state, personally, relationally, or collectively, where everybody is repressing their soul. And we get hijacked through this cognitive dissonance and this emotional state that tries to be the mediator between what the soul wants to bring forth and what the ego identity says can't come forth. I think that's where a lot of warring happens, not just within, but then externally. So we want to try to work towards a way of being aware of what's going on, and then take necessary steps to try to see beyond the things that are repressing our big S selves. So the first thing we can start to do is to cultivate a practice of self-awareness, right? So overcoming ego degradation and soul repression is to become aware of the ways in which we are limiting ourselves, the ways in which we are playing a game, the ways in which we are doing things to appease other or to maintain our salary or to maintain our reputation, right? So we need to take time to reflect, truly reflect on our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, and ask yourself if they deeply align with your authentic self. And again, this egoic nature, when running the show, can be very tricky, and it's masterful at making you truly believe that, yes, I am aligned with my true self. So it is something that requires this reflection, this deep, honest reflection, really looking in the mirror, and being in a state where you're ready to really observe and look at the truer nature that wants to come through. So, trying to be present for yourself, be willing to go there. It's really important. If you don't look at yourself in the mirror and you constantly blame and shame others for the challenges that you face, then you'll be stuck for a very long time, and things will build. The ego will build, right? You will get too close to the sun, and you will build, and you will have a very hard fall if at some point you don't understand your part in every one of your relationships. Okay. The next thing we can do is we can start to practice mindfulness, right? So again, the mindfulness is what helps us to stay present, to connect with our inner state, our inner self. This can be done through meditation, journaling, or simply just taking a few minutes each day to sit in silence and to truly observe your thoughts without judgment. When I was, teaching mindfulness and yoga and meditation, there is time in that practice to be with yourself. And no matter what your opinion of yoga and meditation is, it offers you a space to be introspective. And that is something that most people, honestly, believe it or not, barely have. And if they have that space to be introspective, usually we disassociate for relief or pleasure by being on our phones. So really just sitting with nothing and being introspective, or being in nature, is something that many of us don't do. And we can feel overwhelmed and flooded emotionally if we've suppressed too long. So we just keep running, right? So the next thing we can do is truly just embrace the vulnerability, right? Allow yourself to be vulnerable and open to new experiences, even if they challenge your egoic identity. Got to be willing to go there. This can help you break free from the constraints of the ego and reconnect you with your soul. So again, this is another thing that we can see in the process of reconnecting with the soul is surrounding yourself in a different space or a different environment that permits you to explore this different part of you without judgment. All right. Next thing we need to do is we need to start to cultivate a lot of self-compassion, because that will make the cognitive dissonance and the pain worse if these things are arising and you're giving yourself permission to look at them and you are critiquing every single thing that's arising. It's going to be a worse relationship. The goal here is to ultimately create a more aligned, healthy relationship with the deepest parts of yourself and who you're presenting to be. That's the goal. It's to be more unified and less compartmentalized. So if you're heavy on the inner critic, we have to really understand where that's coming from. It's coming from some sort of projection or trauma or worthiness or self-love. And again, this starts to cultivate this self-awareness of how you treat yourself on a day-to-day basis, right? And again, usually when you don't realize how you're treating yourself, that's often how you treat others, right? So be kind to yourself as you navigate the process of ego degradation and soul liberation. Remember, it's a journey, and there's going to be a lot of ups and downs along the way. The last thing that I just want to talk about today is the profound impact of connecting with others who have like minds. This part of the process, when you start to recalibrate with your deeper self, interesting people may show up and other people may start to fall away from your life. And this is intentional. This has been my experience very profoundly, and the experience of many others who have gone through a major process of ego degradation, is particular learning lessons or people who were repeating things to show you patterns that you hold may start to just fall off. You may start to feel very unattracted to the energy. You may start to become sensitive to that, right? Whereas before, again, you just would give excuses to why certain people are the way they are. Now, all of a sudden, you become sensitive and you have a realization that the impact of your environment impacts you. And you don't want to make excuses for pain that you experience from environments you put yourself in. So you start to shift aspects of your external environment as these things arise. And then also we have this really beautiful phenomenon of individuals, maybe like soul tribe, right? Coming into our lives and demonstrating some higher principles, some higher order reflections for us to help us along our journey, which is really beautiful. So surrounding yourself with supportive and understanding individuals during this time helps you to stay committed to the journey. It really does. And again, you'll start to become very aware. This is part of the self-awareness of when you're in healthy environments, even if it's only one person. I remember when I was going through my main ego degradation, I had to shed almost everything in my life, from people to material possessions. I was living in an apartment at that time, and I purposefully didn't want anything in my apartment. I just wanted it to be completely empty. I had just moved, and I said to myself, I'm not going to bring anything into this space unless I need it and there's a purpose for it being here. And I realized that in myself, in that demonstration, I was committing to that same embodiment principle within myself, with individuals and my own environment. I was no longer going to permit things that were unnecessary or unhealthy within my thought pattern and within my, my space, my environment. So a really important and pivotal part of my journey was this kind of shedding of almost everything for an expanded period of time for me. And then really consciously and deliberately, not being gluttonous in any way, shape, or form, being simple, simplified, and just having in my space that which was absolutely necessary. And then eventually creating some room for, some pleasure items or what have you. But it was like I needed this complete purge to really be aware of what mattered most. And that was truly my connection to my biggest self, my relationship with what's beyond this specific identity that I was holding, and to realize that, we're all more connected than we'd like to believe. We're just blinded a bit as to what's going on in the deeper aspects of our nature. So ego degradation is a way for you to become aware of the ways in which you suppressed your biggest self, or your soul, or your connection to God beyond this particular reality. And it's a calling for you to start to integrate these aspects of yourself and not be compartmentalized, or to run, or to hide, or to try to escape, or to lie in this construction, this fabrication that we present to the world, right? So the journey, when we get here to this place, if we're lucky enough to get to this place within our life, is to take off the masks and realize truly and honestly how beautiful you are at the core of your being, and how similar many of us are, without the judgment and the construct, right? So really big life lesson to learn how to love. And we need to start by learning how to truly love and adhere to our bigger S self. So thanks, guys, for your time.